And it's easy to understand why. But what if the heat, the isolation, the sheer nothingness wasn't the worst part? What if the desert itself started talking back? Death Valley. Sounds from the sand that drive you insane. Imagine a place so desolate, so unforgiving, that it holds the record for the highest reliably recorded air temperature on Earth. 134 degrees Fahrenheit. A place where the sun beats down with relentless fury, baking the landscape into a cracked and barren wasteland. You probably know it. Death Valley. We all know the dangers: dehydration, heat stroke, getting lost in a seemingly endless expanse of sand and rock. We know about the scorpions, the rattlesnakes, the sheer physical challenge of surviving in such an extreme environment. We tell ourselves, stay hydrated, stay on the trails, and you'll be fine. But what if fine isn't an option? What if the danger isn't just physical? There's something else out there in the dunes, something far more insidious than the heat or the wildlife, something that preys on the mind, that whispers in the wind, that burrows into your subconscious and drives you slowly, inexorably mad. It's a sound, or rather, a collection of sounds. Sounds that have been reported for decades, sounds that defy explanation, sounds that have driven seasoned explorers and hardened survivalists to the brink of insanity. These aren't the sounds of nature, not entirely. They're different. People describe them as whispers, as voices just beyond the edge of hearing. Some claim to hear music, faint and distorted, like a radio signal struggling to break through static. Others report metallic scraping, the grinding of gears, the unsettling sound of something large moving beneath the sand. And then there are the screams. Not the screams of animals or even of humans in distress. These are wrong screams, high-pitched, distorted, almost mechanical. Screams that seem to emanate not from a specific location, but from the very air itself. Screams that linger in the silence long after they've faded, leaving behind a chilling residue of fear and dread. For years, these sounds have been dismissed as hallucinations, the product of dehydration, heat exhaustion, or simply an overactive imagination. But the reports persist. They come from credible sources: park rangers, scientists, experienced hikers, people who know the desert well and who are not prone to flights of fancy. What if these sounds are real? What if they are a warning? A manifestation of something ancient and malevolent that slumbers beneath the surface of Death Valley? Or perhaps something even stranger, something that defies our understanding of reality itself? The truth, as you might expect, is elusive. The explanations are varied and often contradictory. Some point to geological phenomena, to the movement of tectonic plates, or the interaction of wind and sand. Others whisper of paranormal activity, of restless spirits trapped in the desolate landscape, forever reliving their final moments. Still others suggest that the sounds are the result of government experiments, top-secret military operations conducted in the remote and isolated desert. But none of these explanations fully account for the sheer consistency and intensity of the reports. None of them capture the sense of dread and unease that permeates the accounts of those who have heard the sounds. And none of them explain why, for some people, the sounds are more than just auditory hallucinations. For some, the sounds trigger something deeper, something primal, something that unlocks a hidden darkness within the human psyche. Imagine yourself alone in Death Valley. The sun is setting, casting long, eerie shadows across the sand dunes. The air is still and silent, save for the occasional whisper of the wind. You're tired, dehydrated, and starting to feel the effects of the heat. You tell yourself it's just your imagination, that you're just tired and stressed. But then you hear it, a faint whisper, barely audible, like someone speaking your name in a language you don't understand. You strain to listen, trying to make out the words, but they remain elusive, just beyond the edge of comprehension. And then, the scraping, a metallic grinding sound, like something heavy being dragged across the sand. It's close, too close. You turn around, scanning the horizon, but you see nothing. Just endless sand dunes, stretching as far as the eye can see. The whisper comes again, louder this time, more insistent. You feel a prickle of fear on the back of your neck. You try to rationalize it, to tell yourself it's just the wind or the rocks shifting in the heat, but you know deep down that it's something else, something wrong. And then you hear the scream. It's not like anything you've ever heard before. High-pitched, distorted, almost mechanical. It seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It pierces your eardrums, vibrates in your bones, and burrows into your brain. You clamp your hands over your ears, trying to block out the sound, but it's no use. It's inside your head now, resonating with something dark and primal within you. You feel a surge of panic, a desperate urge to flee, to escape this desolate place. But where do you go? There's nowhere to run. You're trapped in Death Valley, surrounded by the sounds that drive you insane. And the worst part is, they're getting closer, they're getting louder, and they're starting to make sense. The history of these sounds is as varied and desolate as the landscape itself. Tales abound, stretching back decades, each adding another layer to the mystery. One of the earliest documented accounts comes from a group of prospectors in the late 1940s. They were searching for gold, lured by the promise of riches in the seemingly barren land. Days turned into weeks, and their hopes dwindled along with their supplies. They began to hear things, whispers at first dismissed as the wind or the creaking of their equipment. But then came the grinding, the scraping, the sounds of something heavy moving just beyond the reach of their lanterns. One night, huddled around a meager fire, they heard a scream so piercing, so unnatural, that it sent shivers down their spines. They packed up their gear and fled, abandoning their dreams of gold, vowing never to return to Death Valley. They told their story to anyone who would listen, but they were dismissed as crazy, as men driven mad by the heat and the isolation. But others followed, drawn by the allure of the unknown, or simply by the need to survive in a harsh and unforgiving world. And they, too, heard the sounds. Park rangers, patrolling the vast expanse of the desert, reported hearing strange noises at night, whispers on the wind, the faint strains of music coming from nowhere. Hikers, venturing off the marked trails, spoke of metallic scraping, of the feeling of being watched, of the sense that something was moving beneath the sand. Scientists, too, have investigated the phenomenon. Geologists have used seismographs to detect unusual vibrations in the earth, but they have been unable to pinpoint the source. Acousticians have recorded the ambient sounds of Death Valley, hoping to isolate the strange noises, but they have found nothing conclusive. Some have speculated that the sounds are caused by the movement of sand dunes, by the wind interacting with the unique geological formations of the valley. But these explanations seem inadequate to account for the sheer variety and intensity of the reports. One particularly chilling account comes from a group of researchers who were studying the effects of extreme heat on the human body. They set up a base camp in a remote area of Death Valley, equipped with sophisticated monitoring equipment. For the first few days, everything went according to plan. They collected data on heart rate, body temperature, and cognitive function. But then, the sounds began. At first, they were faint and intermittent, easily dismissed as background noise. But as the days went on, they grew louder and more persistent. The researchers began to experience sleep disturbances, anxiety, and paranoia. They reported hearing whispers, voices, and the sound of something dragging itself across the sand. One night, one of the researchers woke up screaming. He claimed to have seen a figure standing outside his tent, a tall, gaunt shape shrouded in darkness. The other researchers dismissed it as a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by the heat and the stress. But the next morning, they found footprints in the sand outside his tent. Footprints that were unlike anything they had ever seen before. Footprints that seemed to disappear into the sand, as if the creature had simply vanished into thin air. The researchers packed up their equipment and left Death Valley, vowing never to return. They wrote a report, of course, detailing their findings and the strange occurrences they had witnessed. But the report was buried, dismissed as the ramblings of men driven mad by the desert, and the sounds remained a secret, locked away in the minds of those who had heard them. Until now. Because I'm going back. I'm going back to Death Valley to try and understand what happened to those researchers and to find out what those sounds really are. And I'm not going alone. I've assembled a team of experts, a geologist, a linguist, and a sound engineer. Each with their own unique skills and perspectives, all driven by the same burning curiosity. Our first stop is the location of the original research camp. It's been almost 50 years since the researchers abandoned it, and the desert has reclaimed much of the area. But we've managed to pinpoint the location using old maps and satellite imagery. As we approach, the air grows heavy, the silence almost deafening. It's a different kind of silence than I've ever experienced before, not the peaceful quiet of nature, but a silence that feels expectant, like something is waiting. The geologist, Sarah, is the first to notice something unusual. She points to the ground, to a patch of sand that seems to shimmer slightly, even in the shade. The sand here is different, she says, her voice hushed. It's finer, almost like dust, and there's a higher concentration of quartz. Quartz, as you might know, is known for its piezoelectric properties. It can generate an electrical charge when subjected to mechanical stress. Could this be related to the sounds? The linguist David is more interested in the patterns in the sand. He points to a series of ripples, seemingly random at first glance, but upon closer inspection reveal a strange, almost geometric pattern. These aren't natural, he says, tracing the lines with his finger. They look almost like writing. Writing in the sand? What could it possibly mean? The sound engineer, Ben, is busy setting up his equipment. He's got a series of highly sensitive microphones and recorders designed to pick up even the faintest of sounds. He's also brought along a special device that can analyze the frequency and amplitude of any sound it detects. Let's see if we can catch anything, he says, his eyes glued to the monitor. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the desert, Ben picks up something. A faint, almost imperceptible hum. "I've got something," he says, his voice tense. It's very low frequency, almost infrasonic. I can barely hear it, but it's there. He adjusts the settings on his equipment, trying to isolate the sound. As he does, the hum grows louder, more distinct. And then we hear it. The sound. It's not the same sound that the original researchers described. Not yet. But there's a definite resemblance. A deep, resonant tone that seems to vibrate in your very bones. A sound that speaks of immense age and immense power. As we listen, the sound changes. It becomes more complex, more layered. We can hear whispers, murmurs, and strange, almost melodic tones. It's as if the desert itself is starting to sing. And the more we listen, the more unsettling it becomes. It's like the sound is trying to communicate with us, to tell us something. But what? Suddenly, David gasps. He's been staring at the patterns in the sand, his eyes wide with realization. "I think I know what it is," he says, his voice trembling. "I think it's a language, an ancient language, and the sound is the key to understanding it." He grabs his notebook and starts frantically scribbling, trying to decipher the patterns in the sand. As he works, the sound intensifies. It's almost deafening now, filling the air with its strange, unearthly music. And then something even stranger happens. The sand around us begins to vibrate, to ripple. It's as if the desert itself is coming alive. Sarah cries out, pointing to a nearby dune. "Look," she shouts. "The sand, it's moving." We turn to see the dune shifting, reshaping itself. And then we see it, a shape emerging from the sand. A tall, gaunt shape, shrouded in darkness. The same shape that the original researcher saw all those years ago. It's here. It's real. And it's coming for us. The shape takes another step and another. Each footfall is silent, yet somehow amplifies the unnerving symphony of the singing sand. The figure is tall, impossibly so, its form distorted by the heat rising from the desert floor. It's cloaked in what appears to be tattered rags, obscuring any features it might possess. But I can feel its gaze, a burning intensity that seems to pierce through me, leaving me paralyzed with fear. "What is that thing?" Mark whispers, his voice trembling. I shake my head, unable to speak. All I can do is stare, transfixed by the approaching figure. It's like something out of a nightmare, a manifestation of the desert's deepest, darkest secrets. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, tries to regain control. "We need to get out of here," she says, her voice shaking but firm. "Now!" She grabs Mark's arm and starts pulling him toward the jeep. He stumbles, his eyes still glued to the figure. I hesitate for a moment, torn between the desire to flee and the need to understand what's happening. But then, the figure takes another step, and the singing sand reaches a fever pitch. It's a sound that seems to burrow into my skull, amplifying my fear, driving me to the edge of madness. I turn and run, catching up with Sarah and Mark. We scramble into the jeep, slamming the door shut. I fumble with the keys, my hands shaking so violently that I can barely insert them into the ignition. "Hurry!" Mark shouts, his voice cracking with panic. "It's getting closer!" I manage to start the engine and the jeep roars to life. I slam it into gear and hit the gas, sending us hurtling across the desert floor. I glance in the rearview mirror and see the figure still standing there, watching us. It doesn't seem to be chasing us, but its presence is enough to fill me with dread. As we drive, the singing sand slowly fades, replaced by the roar of the engine and the pounding of my heart. We don't speak, each of us lost in our own thoughts, grappling with what we've just witnessed. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, Sarah breaks the silence. "What was that thing?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper. I shake my head. "I don't know," I say, "but I don't want to find out." Mark nods in agreement. "Me neither," he says. "Let's just get out of Death Valley and never come back." We drive in silence for a while longer, the landscape blurring past us. But even as we leave the desert behind, I can't shake the feeling that we're not truly free. That the figure and the singing sands will forever haunt our dreams. Hours later, we find ourselves at a dusty gas station just outside of the park. We fill up the Jeep, grab some ice-cold drinks, and try to piece together what we experienced. "It's like something out of a horror movie," Mark says, shaking his head. I still can't believe what we saw. I nod, still feeling unnerved. "Me neither. But we did see it, didn't we? We both heard the singing sand. We both saw that figure in the distance." Mark sighs. "Yeah, we did. And that's what makes it so terrifying. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't a hallucination. It was real." We sit in silence for a few minutes, sipping our drinks and trying to process everything. The sun beats down on us, but even the oppressive heat can't compare to the chill that still runs down my spine. "So, what do we do now?" Mark asks, finally breaking the silence. "Do we just pretend it never happened?" I take a deep breath. I don't think we can. Not really, but I don't know what else to do. Who would believe us? Mark looks at me, a flicker of determination in his eyes. "Maybe someone will. Maybe there are other people who have experienced something similar. People who have heard the singing sand, seen the figure." I raise an eyebrow. "And how do we find them?" Mark shrugs. "I don't know. But we can try. We can start by doing some research. See if there are any reports of similar phenomena in Death Valley." It's a long shot, but it's better than nothing. "Okay," I say. "Let's do it. Let's see if we can find some answers." We spend the next few hours at the gas station, using our phones to search the internet for anything related to strange occurrences in Death Valley. We find a few articles about the park's unique geological formations and some stories about the extreme heat and isolation. But nothing about singing sand or shadowy figures. "This is pointless," I say, feeling discouraged. "We're not going to find anything." Mark doesn't give up so easily. "Keep looking," he says. "There has to be something out there." And then, after hours of searching, we find it. A small, obscure blog post written by a hiker who claimed to have heard strange sounds in Death Valley. "Listen to this," Mark says, reading aloud from the post. "I was hiking through the park a few years ago when I started hearing this strange singing sound. It was like music, but it was coming from the sand itself. It was the most unsettling thing I've ever heard." My heart starts to race. "That's it," I say. "That's the singing sand." Mark continues reading. "And then, a few days later, I saw something even stranger. A tall, shadowy figure standing on a distant ridge. It was too far away to make out any details, but it definitely wasn't human." I gasp. "The figure." Mark looks up from his phone, his eyes wide with excitement. "This guy saw the same things we did." We spend the next hour devouring the blog post, reading every word and analyzing every detail. The hiker, who identified himself only as Desert Wanderer, described his experiences in vivid detail, capturing the sense of isolation and dread that we had felt in Death Valley. He also mentioned that he had tried to report his findings to the park authorities, but they had dismissed him as a crank. Just like we thought, I say. No one believes him. Mark shakes his head. But we believe him. And maybe if we can find him, we can compare notes and figure out what's really going on. The blog post was several years old, and Desert Wanderer hadn't updated it in a long time. But Mark manages to find his email address, and we send him a message describing our experiences in Death Valley and asking if he'd be willing to talk to us. We wait anxiously for a response, checking our email every few minutes. But days turn into weeks, and we hear nothing from Desert Wanderer. I start to lose hope, convinced that we'll never get any answers. But Mark refuses to give up. He continues to research Death Valley, searching for any clue that might shed light on the strange phenomena we encountered. And then, one day, he finds something truly disturbing. An old newspaper article from the 1930s detailing a series of mysterious disappearances in Death Valley. The article describes how several prospectors and tourists vanished without a trace, leaving behind no evidence of foul play. The only common thread was that they had all reported hearing strange singing sounds in the desert. This is getting weirder and weirder, I say, feeling a knot of fear tighten in my stomach. What do you think it all means? Mark shrugs. I don't know, but I think we're getting closer to the truth. And I have a feeling that the truth is going to be a lot more terrifying than we ever imagined. We decide to go back to Death Valley. We know it's dangerous, but we can't shake the feeling that we need to understand what's happening there. We need to find out why the sand sings and who that figure is. We pack our jeep with supplies, including extra water, food and gas. We also bring a high-quality audio recorder, hoping to capture the singing sand on tape. As we drive back east to the park, I can't help but feel a sense of dread washing over me. The landscape seems even more desolate and forbidding than before. The air is thick with heat, and the silence is broken only by the sound of our engine. Are you sure about this? I ask Mark, my voice trembling lightly. He nods, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. We have to do this, he says. We have to find out what's going on. We drive deeper and deeper into the heart of Death Valley, following the same route we took before. As we approach the area where we first heard the singing sand, I can feel my heart pounding in my chest. The air is still, and the only sound is the wind whistling through the canyons. And then we hear it. A faint, ethereal sound, like music carried on the wind. The singing sand. It's even more haunting and unsettling than I remember. The melody is strange and dissonant, like nothing I've ever heard before. It seems to vibrate through my bones, filling me with a sense of unease. We stop the jeep and get out, listening intently to the singing sand. The sound seems to be coming from all directions, making it impossible to pinpoint its source. This is insane, I say, my voice barely a whisper. How is this even possible? Mark pulls out the audio recorder and starts recording the sound. We need to capture this, he says. We need to prove that we're not crazy. We spend the next few hours exploring the area, trying to find the source of the singing sand. But the sound seems to follow us, always just out of reach. As the sun begins to set, we decide to set up camp for the night. We find a relatively sheltered spot behind a large rock formation, hoping to shield ourselves from the wind. As we are setting up our tents, I notice something out of the corner of my eye. A tall, shadowy figure standing on a distant ridge. The figure is silhouetted against the setting sun, making it impossible to make out any details. But I know it's the same figure we saw before. The figure seems to be watching us, its presence radiating a sense of menace. I feel a chill run down my spine, and I know that we are not alone in Death Valley. We are being watched, and whatever is watching us, it doesn't want us here. I point the figure out to Mark, and his eyes widen in fear. "It's him," he says. "The figure." We stare at the figure for a long time, our hearts pounding in our chests. It doesn't move, it just stands there, watching us. And then, as the last rays of sunlight disappear below the horizon, the figure vanishes. It simply fades away, as if it were never there at all. We stand there in the darkness, our nerves on edge. The singing sand seems to grow louder, its melody more haunting and unsettling than ever. I can't shake the feeling that we're in grave danger, that something terrible is about to happen. "We need to get out of here," I say, my voice trembling. "We need to leave Death Valley now." Mark hesitates for a moment, then nods in agreement. "You're right," he says. "This place is not right. This place is not safe." We turn back towards the jeep, our hearts pounding in our chests. The singing sand follows us, its eerie melody echoing through the darkness. It feels like the desert itself is trying to keep us here, luring us deeper into its grasp. As we reach the jeep, I fumble with the keys, my hands shaking so badly that I can barely get them into the ignition. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the engine roars to life. I slam the jeep into gear and we speed away, leaving the singing sand and the unsettling silence behind us. We drive for hours, not stopping, until we reach the edge of Death Valley. We pull over at a gas station, both of us exhausted and shaken. As we fill up the tank, we can't help but glance back at the dark expanse of the desert, a shiver running down our spines. "What do you think it was?" Mark asks, his voice barely a whisper. "What did we see out there?" I shake my head, unable to answer. I don't know what we saw, but I know that there was something unnatural, something terrifying. We continue our journey, driving through the night until we reach the safety of civilization. We check into a motel, desperate for a hot shower and a good night's sleep. But even in the comfort of our room, we can't shake the feeling that we're being watched. The singing sand still echoes in our ears, its haunting melody, a constant reminder of the horrors we witnessed in Death Valley. The next morning, we decide to do some research. We spend hours online, searching for answers, trying to find some explanation for what we experienced. We come across stories of other travelers who have reported similar occurrences. Strange sounds, unexplained apparitions, a feeling of being watched. Some believe that Death Valley is haunted by the spirits of those who have perished in its unforgiving landscape. Others believe that the singing sand is a natural phenomenon caused by the unique composition of the sand dunes, but none of the explanations seem to fully account for what we saw and heard. As we delve deeper into our research, we stumble upon a local legend, a tale of an ancient Native American tribe that once inhabited Death Valley. According to the legend, the tribe possessed a powerful connection to the desert, able to communicate with the spirits of the land. But one day the tribe angered the spirits, and as punishment, the desert began to sing, driving the tribe mad and ultimately leading to their demise. The legend claims that the singing sand is a curse, a warning to those who dare to disturb the peace of Death Valley. Do you think it's true? Mark asks, his eyes wide with disbelief. Do you think we stumbled upon something ancient, something cursed? I hesitate for a moment, unsure of what to believe. I don't know, I say. But I can't shake the feeling that we're in over our heads, that we've awakened something that should have remained buried. We decide to contact a local expert, a historian who specializes in the history and legends of Death Valley. We explain our experience to him, describing the singing sand, the disappearing figure, the overwhelming sense of dread. The historian listens patiently, nodding occasionally. When we finish, he leans back in his chair and sighs. You're not the first to report such occurrences, he says. Death Valley is a place of great mystery, a place where the veil between worlds seems thin. There are things that science cannot explain, things that defy logic and reason. He tells us that the legend of the singing sand is well known in the area, and that many believe it to be more than just a myth. He warns us to be careful, to respect the power of the desert, and to never underestimate the forces that lie hidden beneath the surface. His words leave us feeling even more uneasy. We realize that we've stumbled upon something far more profound and dangerous than we could have ever imagined. The singing sand is not just a strange phenomenon. It's a warning, a sign that we've crossed a line. We decide to head back to Death Valley. We need to understand what happened. We need to find out what that singing sand is and why it's doing what it is. We book another trip and prepare for the worst. This time, we'll be ready. This time, we're going to find out what's really going on. We arrive in Death Valley a week later. The sun beats down on us, the heat radiating off the sand like an oven. We've come prepared this time. We've got scientific equipment, recording devices, and a newfound determination to uncover the truth. All right, I say, adjusting my hat. Let's start where we left off, that dune near Stovepipe Wells. Sarah nods, her face grim. I still can't shake that feeling, that pressure. We drive to the dune, the landscape unchanged, eerily familiar. The sand looks innocent enough, golden and rippled by the wind. But we know better. We set up our equipment, carefully placing microphones and sensors to capture any unusual vibrations or sounds. Okay, let's try something, I say, grabbing a handful of sand. Remember how it only sang when we disturbed it in a certain way? I let the sand trickle through my fingers, listening intently. Nothing, just a whisper of the wind. Try walking down the dune, Sarah suggests. Like we did before. I hesitate, a shiver running down my spine, but I take a deep breath and start walking. As I descend, the sand shifts beneath my feet, a low rumble building in intensity. And then it begins. The song. But this time it's different. It's louder, more intense, almost deafening. It's no longer a melodic hum. It's a cacophony of voices, whispers, and screams. I stumble, my head throbbing, the sound overwhelming my senses. Turn it off! Turn it off! Sarah yells, rushing towards me, her hands covering her ears. I try to stop, but the sand seems to pull me forward, the song growing stronger with each step. It feels like the dune itself is alive, resonating with some ancient, malevolent energy. Finally, I manage to stop, collapsing to my knees, the sound slowly fading. Sarah helps me up, her face pale with fear. "What was that?" she gasped. "It was horrible." "I don't know," I say, my voice trembling, "but it's definitely not just sand." We check the recording equipment. The audio is distorted, almost unusable, but we can still make out the underlying sound, the song. We run a frequency analysis. "Look at this," Sarah says, pointing to the screen. "The frequencies are off the charts. There's something else mixed in with the natural vibrations of the sand. Some kind of interference." We spend the next few days exploring the area, searching for clues. We consult with geologists, physicists, and even paranormal investigators. No one can offer a definitive explanation. Some suggest it's a rare geological phenomenon, a combination of specific sand grain sizes, wind conditions, and resonant frequencies. Others believe it's something more, something unexplainable. One evening, we meet an old prospector named Jebediah at a dusty saloon in Beatty, Nevada. He's a wiry man with sun-baked skin and eyes that have seen too much. We tell him about the singing sand and the strange voices we heard. Jebediah listens intently, his gaze never leaving our faces. When we finish, he takes a long swig of his whiskey and sighs. "The desert talks to those who listen," he says, his voice raspy. "But sometimes it speaks in tongues no man should understand." He tells us stories of other strange occurrences in Death Valley, tales of phantom lights, unexplained disappearances, and whispers carried on the wind. He speaks of a hidden history, a past shrouded in mystery and bloodshed. "This land has seen things," he says, "terrible things, and sometimes those things leave a mark, a stain on the fabric of reality." Jebediah warns us to be careful, to respect the desert and its secrets. "Some doors are best left unopened," he says. "Some questions are best left unasked." But we are driven by a need to understand, to uncover the truth behind the singing sand. We decide to delve deeper into the mystery, despite Jebediah's warnings. We feel like we're on the verge of discovering something truly significant, something that could change our understanding of the world. The next day, we return to the area where we first heard the singing sand. We set up our equipment and begin recording. The sand is quiet at first, but as the sun begins to set, the singing starts again. It's faint at first, but it grows louder and louder, filling the air with its haunting melody. This time, we're ready. We have a parabolic microphone and a spectrum analyzer. We carefully record the sounds, analyzing their frequencies and patterns. As we listen, we notice something strange. The singing sand isn't just one sound. It's a complex mixture of different frequencies layered on top of each other. And within that mixture, we hear something else, something faint and distorted, but undeniably present. Voices. They're whispering, murmuring, speaking in a language we don't understand. We try to isolate the voices, to filter out the background noise. After hours of painstaking work, we manage to clean up the audio. We play it back, listening intently. The voices are still distorted, but we can make out some words, some phrases. They're speaking in a language that sounds vaguely familiar, but we can't quite place it. Mark, who has a background in linguistics, recognizes it first. "It's an archaic dialect of Paiute," he says, his eyes wide with shock. "It's almost extinct." We find a Paiute translator and play the recording for him. He listens carefully, his face growing increasingly grim. When the recording ends, he looks at us with a mixture of fear and respect. "These are the voices of the dead," he says. They are speaking of a great tragedy, a terrible curse. The translator tells us that the voices are recounting a story of betrayal, murder, and revenge. They speak of a sacred place desecrated, of ancient spirits angered. They warn of a darkness that lies beneath the sand, a force that seeks to consume all who dare to disturb it. We realize that the singing sand isn't just a geological phenomenon, it's a manifestation of something much deeper, something much darker. It's a warning, a plea, a desperate attempt to communicate with the living. Suddenly, the wind picks up, swirling around us. The singing sand grows louder, more intense. The voices become clearer, more urgent. We feel a presence, a cold, malevolent energy that surrounds us. We look around, but there's nothing there. Just the sand, the wind, and the voices of the dead. The air crackles with an unseen energy, and the ground beneath our feet begins to vibrate. We realize we've stumbled onto something far more dangerous than we ever imagined. We need to get out of here before it's too late. The desert is not just talking to us anymore. It's threatening to swallow us whole, and we're beginning to understand that maybe Jebediah was right. Some doors are best left unopened, and some secrets should remain buried beneath the sands of Death Valley, undisturbed for all eternity. The sun beats down with renewed ferocity, as if the desert itself is trying to drive us away. Sarah is pale, her eyes wide with a fear I haven't seen before. Even Mark, usually the picture of stoic composure, is sweating profusely, his hand never leaving the grip of his camera. "Did you hear that?" she whispers, her voice barely audible above the rising wind. It sounded like, crying. I strain my ears, but all I can hear is the howl of the wind and the gritty whisper of sand against rock. "I didn't hear anything, Sarah. It's just the wind playing tricks on you." I try to sound reassuring, but my own heart is pounding in my chest. I did hear something, a faint, almost imperceptible sob carried on the breeze, but I don't want to admit it, not even to myself. Mark lowers his camera, his brow furrowed. "I think I got something on the audio," he says, his voice tight. "I'll have to check it later." He doesn't meet my eyes, and I know he heard it too. We start to move faster, our initial fascination replaced with a desperate need to escape. The landscape seems to shift and change around us, the familiar landmarks blurring into a disorienting maze of sand and rock. The air grows heavy, thick with an oppressive silence that is more terrifying than any sound. It feels like we're being watched, scrutinized by unseen eyes that pierce through the veil of the desert. "I don't like this," Sarah says, her voice trembling. "I really don't like this." I put my arm around her, trying to offer some comfort, but I feel as helpless as she does. We're completely exposed, vulnerable to whatever forces are at play in this desolate place. Suddenly, a shape appears on the horizon, a shimmering mirage that seems to dance in the heat. At first, I think it's just a trick of the light, but as we get closer, it becomes clearer. It's a building, or what's left of one, a crumbling structure that seems to rise out of the sand like a forgotten tombstone. "What is that?" Mark asks, his voice hushed with awe and apprehension. I shake my head. "I don't know, but I don't think we should go near it." But it's too late. We're drawn to it, compelled by an unseen force that pulls us forward with irresistible strength. As we approach the building, we can see that it was once a small cabin, perhaps a prospector's shack or a miner's dwelling. The walls are cracked and weathered. The roof has long since collapsed, and the windows are empty sockets that stare out at the desert with vacant eyes. A rusted sign hangs precariously above the door, barely legible, but I can make out a few letters. Hope Mine. A shiver runs down my spine. This place feels wrong, deeply wrong. We exchange a nervous glance. Hope Mine, Mark says, his voice barely a whisper. I don't like this. I can't argue with him. The air around the cabin is thick with a sense of foreboding, as if the very stones are whispering warnings. But the pull, that irresistible force, is still there, urging us forward. It's like an invisible rope tied around our chests, dragging us closer to the dilapidated structure. We can't just turn back now, I say, trying to sound more confident than I feel. We've come this far. Let's just take a quick look inside and see if we can find anything that might explain what's going on. Mark hesitates for a moment, then nods reluctantly. All right, he says. But if things get weird, we're out of here. Agreed? Agreed, I reply, and together we approach the crumbling cabin. The door is hanging off its hinges, creaking ominously in the slight breeze. We push it open and step inside, our eyes scanning the darkness. The interior of the cabin is even more dilapidated than the exterior. The floorboards are rotten and creaky, the walls are covered in peeling paint, and the air is thick with dust and the smell of decay. A few pieces of rusted mining equipment lie scattered around the room, along with some broken furniture and other debris. As we venture deeper into the cabin, we notice a small wooden chest tucked away in a corner. It's covered in dust and cobwebs, but it looks surprisingly intact. What's that? Mark asks, pointing to the chest. Maybe it's got something inside, I say, and we cautiously approach it. I kneel down and brush away the dust, revealing a small, tarnished lock. I try to open it, but it's firmly secured. Looks like we'll need something to break it open, I say. Mark rummages through his backpack and pulls out a small crowbar. This should do the trick, he says, and he carefully inserts the crowbar into the lock. With a grunt, he applies pressure, and the lock snaps open. We lift the lid of the chest and our eyes widen in surprise. Inside, we find a collection of old documents, maps, and photographs, all tied together with a faded ribbon. I carefully lift the bundle out of the chest and begin to examine the contents. The documents appear to be mining records and personal letters dating back to the early 1900s. The maps show the layout of the Hope Mine with various tunnels and shafts marked with cryptic symbols. And the photographs are what really catch our attention. They show a group of miners posing proudly in front of the mine entrance. But something is off about their faces. They look gaunt and hollow-eyed, their expressions filled with a strange mixture of fear and desperation. As we pore over the document and photographs, a chilling realization dawns on us. These miners, they weren't just working the Hope Mine. They were searching for something hidden deep beneath the desert sands. And whatever it was, it drove them to the brink of madness. One of the letters, written in a shaky hand, speaks of strange sounds emanating from the mine. Sounds that drove men to madness and despair. The writer describes the sounds as a singing or a chanting, a haunting melody that seemed to burrow into their minds and steal their sanity. Could this be the same singing sound that we've been hearing? Suddenly, a loud creaking sound echoes through the cabin. We jump, startled, and look around. The walls seem to be groaning under the weight of the years, and the floorboards are creaking ominously beneath our feet. "I don't like this," Mark says again, his voice trembling. "I think we should get out of here." I nod in agreement. The atmosphere in the cabin has become oppressive, almost suffocating. It feels like we're being watched, scrutinized by unseen eyes. As we turn to leave, we hear a faint sound, a whisper carried on the desert wind. It's the singing sand, but it's closer now, louder, more insistent. It seems to be coming from inside the mine itself, beckoning us to come closer. The pull, that irresistible force, intensifies, threatening to overwhelm us. "We have to go," I say, grabbing Mark's arm. "Now!" But as we reach the doorway, a figure appears, blocking our path. It's a tall, gaunt man dressed in tattered mining clothes. His face is hidden in shadow, but we can see his eyes, burning with an eerie, unnatural light. He raises a hand, and the singing sand swells to a deafening crescendo. We are trapped. There is no escape. The desert has claimed us, and its song will drive us insane. "Welcome," the figure rasped, his voice like gravel grinding against stone. "You have come to hear the song." Mark, paralyzed with fear, could only stammer, "Who? Who are you?" The figure chuckled, a dry, humorless sound that echoed through the mine shaft. "I am the keeper of this place, the guardian of this song. I have waited a long time for visitors." I tried to pull Mark back, but it was no use. We were rooted to the spot, held captive by the figure's intense gaze and the overwhelming sound. The singing sand seemed to vibrate through our very bones, resonating with a primal fear that I had never known existed. "What song?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. "What are you talking about?" The figure took a step closer, and the light from our flashlights revealed more of his face. His skin was stretched tight over his skull, and his eyes were sunken and bloodshot. He looked like a living corpse, a relic of a forgotten time. "The song of the desert," he said, his voice a low, hypnotic drone. "The song of the sand. It is a song of sorrow, a song of loss, a song of madness. It has been sung for centuries, and it will continue to be sung long after you are gone." "We don't want to hear it," I said, desperately trying to break free from his hold. "We just want to leave." The figure smiled, a ghastly, unsettling expression. "No one leaves. Once you've heard the song, it stays with you forever. It seeps into your mind, your soul. It becomes a part of you." He raised his hand again, and the singing sand reached a fever pitch. It was as if the entire desert was screaming, a chorus of tormented souls trapped within the grains of sand. I clutched my head, trying to block out the sound, but it was no use. It was inside me now, swirling around in my brain, twisting my thoughts into grotesque shapes. Mark let out a strangled cry and collapsed to his knees, his hands covering his ears. I could see the terror in his eyes, the dawning realization that we were doomed. "What do you want from us?" I shouted, my voice barely audible above the din. "Why are you doing this?" The figure leaned in close, his breath cold and stale against my face. "I want you to understand," he whispered. "I want you to feel the pain, the despair, the loneliness of this place. I want you to become a part of the song." He gestured towards the depths of the mine, and I saw a faint, flickering light emanating from the darkness. "Come," he said. "Let me show you the source of the song." He turned and walked into the mine, beckoning us to follow. I looked at Mark, who was still huddled on the ground, shaking uncontrollably. I knew that if we didn't follow, we might never understand what was happening. But I also knew that stepping into that mine could be the last thing we ever did. Mark, I say, my voice trembling slightly, we have to go. We have to see what's in there. He looks up at me, his eyes wide with fear. Are you crazy? We can't go in there. He's insane. I kneel down beside him and put my hand on his shoulder. I know, Mark, but we have to. We can't just leave this unresolved. We came here to understand the sounds, and this is our chance. He hesitates for a moment, then slowly nods. Okay, he says, his voice barely audible. Okay, let's do it. But if anything happens, I'm blaming you. I manage a weak smile. Deal. We help Mark to his feet, and he leans heavily on me as we approach the entrance to the mine. The air grows colder as we get closer, and the flickering light seems to grow brighter, beckoning us into the darkness. I take a deep breath and step inside, Mark close behind me. The mine is dark and damp, the air thick with the smell of dust and decay. The only light comes from the flickering lantern that Jebediah is carrying, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. We follow him deeper into the mine, the silence broken only by the sound of our footsteps and the occasional drip of water. As we venture further in, the tunnel begins to narrow, the walls closing in around us. I can feel the weight of the earth above us, pressing down on us, making it hard to breathe. I glance back at Mark, who looks even more terrified than before. I offer him a reassuring smile, but I'm not sure it helps. Finally, we reach a large cavern, the end of the tunnel. In the center of the cavern is a massive pile of sand, shimmering and pulsating with an otherworldly light. The singing sand. This is the source of the sound. Jebediah stops in front of the sand pile and turns to face us, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. Here it is, he says, his voice filled with a strange reverence. The heart of the desert, the source of the song. He raises his lantern, illuminating the sand pile. As the light shines on it, the sand begins to vibrate, the singing growing louder and more intense. I can feel the sound resonating through my body, shaking me to my core. It's a beautiful sound, but also terrifying, filled with a deep sense of sorrow and despair. This sand, Jebediah says, it's not like any other sand. It's alive. It remembers everything that has ever happened in this valley. Every death, every heartbreak, every moment of joy and sorrow. It absorbs it all and it transforms it into song. He pauses, his gaze fixed on the sand pile. But the song is not always beautiful. Sometimes it's filled with pain and anger. Sometimes it's a cry for help. He turns to me, his eyes filled with an intense, unsettling passion. And now, he says, it's time for you to become a part of the song. He takes a step towards me, his hand outstretched. I instinctively recoil, but I'm frozen in place, unable to move. Mark tries to pull me back, but Jebediah pushes him away with ease. Don't be afraid, Jebediah says, his voice soft and soothing. Just let the sand touch you. Let it absorb your pain, your fears, your hopes. Let it transform you into something new. He reaches out and touches my forehead with his fingertips. As he does, a jolt of energy surges through my body, and I feel a strange connection to the sand pile. I can hear the voices of the dead, the whispers of the wind, the echoes of the past. It's overwhelming, terrifying, and strangely beautiful all at once. I close my eyes and let the sand consume me, surrendering to the song of the desert. I feel myself changing, transforming, becoming something more than I ever thought possible. I am no longer just myself. I'm a part of the valley, a part of the song. But as I lose myself in the song, I also begin to understand something else, something that Jebediah doesn't know, something that could change everything. The sand is not just a repository of memories, it's also a prison, and the voices trapped within it are not singing, they're screaming to be free. My eyes snap open. The beauty, the serenity, it's still there, shimmering on the surface. But now I see the truth beneath it. The notes aren't harmonious, they're dissonant, clashing, a cacophony of despair, barely masked as melody. I can almost hear individual cries, pleas for help, whispers of forgotten names and broken dreams. Jebediah, I say, my voice a strained whisper against the wind. Do you hear that? Really hear it? He chuckles, a low rumble in his chest. Of course, child. The song of the valley. It speaks to everyone differently, but it speaks true. What does it say to you? It's not just a song. It's a cry. People are trapped here, Jebediah, trapped in the sand. His smile falters, just for a moment, before hardening into a mask of placidity. Trapped? Nonsense. They're at peace. They've become one with the valley, just like we will. But they don't want to be. I can hear them. They're scared, they're lonely, they want to leave. I'm practically shouting now, the revelation clawing at my throat. He steps closer, his eyes boring into mine. You're letting your fear cloud your judgment. The valley provides. It takes care of its own. They're not suffering. They're resting. Resting? Jebediah, I heard a woman screaming for her child, a man begging for forgiveness. How is that resting? The image of the woman's face, contorted in anguish, flashes in my mind. I can almost feel her desperation, her bone-chilling terror. He grips my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. You need to calm down. You're not thinking clearly. The valley is testing you. It's showing you its power, its secrets. But you mustn't let it overwhelm you. Testing me, or warning me. I pull my arm away, stepping back from him. What happened to the others, Jebediah? The ones who came here before me? Did they hear the screams too? Is that why they're gone? He sighs, the sound heavy with what I now recognize as practiced patience. They weren't ready. They couldn't accept the valley's gift. They fought it, and the valley, it doesn't tolerate resistance. So it killed them? The words hang in the air, stark and accusing. He doesn't answer directly. The valley has its own ways of dealing with those who disrespect it. He gestures around us at the endless expanse of sand. It reclaims them. It makes them part of itself. I stare at him, my heart pounding in my chest. He's not the benevolent guide I thought he was. He's an apologist, a believer. And the sounds? I ask, my voice barely a whisper. The music, the voices, what are they? He smiles, a slow, unsettling curve of his lips. The valley's memories, the echoes of those who came before, those who listened, and those who didn't. He pauses, his eyes locking onto mine. They're a test of sorts. A test? I repeat, confused. What kind of test? A test of understanding, a test of acceptance, a test of whether you are worthy of the valley's secrets. He takes a step closer, his shadow falling over me. Some hear beauty in the sounds, some hear madness, and some hear the truth. The air crackles with an unnerving energy. I can feel Mark shifting nervously beside me, but I can't tear my gaze away from Jebediah's intense stare. What truth? I finally manage to ask, my voice barely a whisper. The truth about what lies beneath, he says, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. The truth about the power that sleeps here, waiting to be awakened. He gestures towards the Hope Mine with a gnarled hand. It's all down there, waiting for those who are brave enough or foolish enough to seek it out. He turns and shuffles towards the mine entrance, beckoning us to follow. The darkness within seems to pulse with an unseen energy, drawing us in despite our better judgment. Come, he says, his voice echoing slightly in the narrow space. Let me show you what the valley has to offer. Mark and I exchange another uneasy glance. This was it. The moment of truth. We could turn back, walk away from the Hope Mine, and pretend we never heard the singing sand or met Jebediah. But we both knew that we couldn't. The mystery had taken hold of us, and we were compelled to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. With a deep breath, I step forward, following Jebediah into the darkness. Mark hesitates for a moment, then falls in step beside me, his hand resting on the handle of his flashlight. The air inside the mine is cool and damp, a stark contrast to the dry heat of the desert outside. The smell of dust and decay hangs heavy in the air, mingling with a faint metallic tang that makes my nostrils twitch. As we venture deeper into the mine, the singing sand fades away, replaced by an oppressive silence. The only sound is the crunch of our boots on the loose gravel and the steady drip of water from the ceiling. Jebediah leads the way, his lantern casting eerie shadows that dance across the walls. This mine has been abandoned for years, he says, his voice echoing through the tunnels. They were digging for silver, mostly, but they never found much, just enough to keep them going for a while. Eventually, they gave up and moved on. Why? Mark asks, his voice laced with suspicion. Why did they give up? Was it just a lack of silver? Jebediah chuckles, a dry, rasping sound. That's what they told everyone. But the truth is, they found something else down here, something they couldn't understand, something that scared them away. What was it? I ask, my heart pounding in my chest. He stops walking and turns to face us, his eyes gleaming in the lantern light. They found the source of the singing sand. He pauses for dramatic effect, letting the weight of his words sink in. They discovered that the sand wasn't just singing, it was communicating. It was trying to tell them something. But they didn't listen. They were too afraid. What was it trying to say? Mark asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Jebediah shakes his head. That's what we're here to find out, isn't it? He turns and continues walking deeper into the mine. Come, we're almost there. We follow him down a narrow passage, the walls closing in around us. The air grows colder and heavier, as if we're descending into the very heart of the earth. Finally, we reach a large cavern, its ceiling lost in the darkness above. In the center of the cavern, a pool of water shimmers in the lantern light. The water is perfectly still, reflecting the darkness like a mirror. And around the pool, the sand. It's singing, but this time the melody is different. It's louder, more intense, more desperate. This is it, Jebediah says, his voice filled with reverence, the heart of the singing sand. He steps towards the pool, his eyes fixed on the shimmering water. Listen closely, he says. Can you hear it? Can you understand what it's trying to say? Mark and I listen intently, straining our ears to decipher the eerie melody. At first, it's just a jumble of sounds, a chaotic mix of tones and rhythms. But as we focus, patterns begin to emerge, words begin to form. Help us, the sand seems to be singing. Help us, before it's too late. The voices, they aren't just the echoes of the past. They're a warning, a desperate plea for help from something trapped beneath the sand. Something that is slowly, inexorably awakening. And then I hear something else. A new voice rising above the others. A deep, resonant voice that sends shivers down my spine. You shouldn't have come here, the voice booms, echoing through the cavern. You have disturbed something that should have remained asleep. Jebediah freezes, his eyes widening in terror. It's awake, he whispers. It's finally awake. The ground begins to tremble. The water in the pool ripples and churns, and from the depths of the darkness a pair of eyes open, burning with an unholy light. Now, the voice says, you will pay the price. And the singing sand. It screams. The scream is a physical force slamming into us, making our teeth ache. Jebediah clutches his head, groaning. The guardians. They're angry. Guardians of what? I shout, trying to make myself heard over the escalating cacophony. The sand swirls around us, forming miniature tornadoes that sting our skin. The air crackles with an unnatural energy. Jebediah doesn't answer, his gaze fixed on the glowing eyes in the darkness. They are massive, reptilian, and filled with ancient malice. A low growl rumbles from the depths, shaking the very foundations of the cavern. We need to get out of here, I yell, grabbing Jebediah's arm. Now! But it's too late. The ground splits open, revealing a chasm of unimaginable depth. From the abyss, a colossal creature begins to rise. Its scales shimmer like obsidian, reflecting the eerie light of the cavern. Its head is crowned with jagged horns, and its jaws are lined with rows of razor-sharp teeth. A shy hulud, Jebediah breathes, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and dread. A sandworm, but unlike anything I have ever heard of in the legends. The creature lets out a deafening roar, a sound that shatters the remaining stalactites and sends them crashing to the ground. The singing sand intensifies, reaching a fever pitch that threatens to drive us mad. Run! I scream, pulling Jebediah towards the entrance of the cavern. We scramble over the fallen rocks, desperate to escape the monstrous creature that is now fully emerged from the chasm. The sandworm lunges, its massive body filling the entire cavern. Its jaws snap shut, missing us by mere inches. We stumble and fall, scrambling to our feet just as the creature turns to face us again. This way, Jebediah yells, leading me down a narrow passage that I hadn't noticed before. We squeeze through the opening, the creature's roar echoing behind us. The passage twists and turns, leading us deeper into the heart of the mountain. The air grows thick and heavy, and the singing sand seems to follow us, its eerie melody a constant reminder of the danger we are in. Where are we going? I ask, my voice trembling with fear. To the other side, Jebediah replies, his eyes filled with determination. There's another exit, a secret passage known only to a few. We continue to run, our lungs burning, our legs aching. The passage seems to stretch on forever, but we can't stop. We know that the sandworm is still out there, haunting us, waiting for us to make a mistake. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, we reach the end of the passage. A faint light filters through, illuminating a small opening in the rock face. We squeeze through one by one and find ourselves in a hidden canyon, a secret oasis in the heart of Death Valley. The canyon is lush and green, a stark contrast to the desolate landscape we've been traversing. A small stream flows through the center, and trees provide shade from the scorching sun. It's almost peaceful. But the memory of the sandworm and the singing sand is still fresh in our minds. We know that this respite is only temporary. What is this place? Mark asks, his voice filled with awe. Jebediah takes a deep breath, as if savoring the fresh air. This is a sanctuary, he says, a place where the desert's magic still holds strong. But even here, we're not safe. The desert remembers. He leads us to a small clearing, where a makeshift campsite has been set up. There's a fire pit, some blankets, and a few supplies. It looks like someone has been living here for a while. Who else knows about this place? I ask, my eyes scanning the surroundings. Only a few, Jebediah replies. Those who have sought refuge from the desert's madness. Those who have heard the singing sand and lived to tell the tale. He begins to build a fire, his movements practiced and efficient. Mark and I help him gather wood, our minds still racing with questions. We're safe for now, but we know that we can't stay here forever. We need to find a way to stop the singing sand, to silence the voices that haunt this place. As the fire crackles to life, Jebediah sits down and looks at us with a serious expression. The singing sand, he says, it's not just a natural phenomenon. It's a manifestation of something much deeper, something much darker. He pauses, as if searching for the right words. Death Valley, he continues, it's always been a place of extremes. Extreme heat, extreme dryness, extreme isolation, but there's also an extreme concentration of energy, a raw, untamed power that can drive men mad. He explains that the singing sand is a conduit for this energy, a way for the desert to communicate with those who are sensitive to it. The voices we heard, the visions we saw, they were all fragments of the desert's consciousness. But why? Mark asks. Why is the desert trying to communicate with us? Because it's dying, Jebediah replies. The desert is being poisoned, corrupted by something that is buried deep beneath the sand. He tells us about the hope mine, the mine that we saw earlier. It wasn't just a gold mine, he explains. It was a gateway, a portal to something ancient and evil. The miners, he says, they didn't just dig for gold, they dug too deep. They unearthed something that should have remained buried. He believes that the singing sand is a warning, a desperate plea for help from the desert itself. The sandworm, the creature that chased us through the mine, it's a guardian, a protector of the desert's secrets. But what can we do? I ask. We're just two guys with a camera. Jebediah smiles grimly. You're more than that, he says. You're witnesses. You've seen the truth. And now you have a choice to make. You can turn back, forget everything you've seen, and go back to your normal lives. Or you can help me save the desert. He looks at us expectantly, his eyes filled with hope. I look at Mark, and he looks back at me. We both know what they have to do. We can't just walk away from this. We have to help. We're in, I say, my voice filled with determination. We'll do whatever it takes. Mark nods in agreement. Let's save this desert, he says. Jebediah smiles, a genuine smile this time. Good, he says. Then we have much to do. The path ahead will be dangerous, but together we can face whatever challenges lie ahead. He tells us that we need to find the source of the corruption, the thing that the miners unearthed. He believes it's located deep within the Hope Mine, in a hidden chamber that has been sealed off for centuries. But how do we get there? Mark asks. The mine is crawling with sandworms. We'll have to be clever, Jebediah replies. We'll have to use our wits and our courage to outsmart them. And we'll need to find a way to neutralize the singing sand to silence the voices that will try to drive us mad. He reaches into his pack and pulls out a small pouch. This, he says, is desert sage. It's a powerful herb that can ward off evil spirits and calm the mind. Burn it, and it will help to keep the singing sand at bay. He hands us the pouch, and we take it gratefully. We know that we're going to need all the help we can get. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the canyon, we prepare for our journey back into the Hope Mine. We know that the dangers are real, but we're determined to face them head on. We have a mission to fulfill, a desert to save. We pack our gear, check our supplies, and say a silent prayer. Then, with Jebediah leading the way, we step back into the darkness, ready to confront whatever horrors await us within the depths of the Hope Mine. We know that the journey will be fraught with peril, but we also know that we can't give up. The fate of Death Valley and perhaps even the world may depend on it, and the eerie calm of the hidden canyon slowly fades as we steel ourselves for the terrors that await us. The air inside the mine is thick with the smell of dust and decay, a musty odor that clings to the back of your throat. Jebediah holds his lantern high, casting flickering shadows that dance across the rough-hewn walls. Each step echoes unnervingly, the sound amplified by the oppressive silence that surrounds us. Stay close, Jebediah warns, his voice barely above a whisper. And keep your ears open. Anything could be lurking in these tunnels. We move cautiously, our eyes scanning the darkness, our hands resting on our weapons. The mine is a labyrinth of twisting passages and dead ends, a maze designed to disorient and confuse. We pass rusted mining carts, their wheels frozen in time, and piles of discarded tools, relics of a bygone era. Suddenly, a faint sound reaches our ears. A low, guttural growl that seems to emanate from the depths of the earth. "Did you hear that?" I ask, my heart pounding in my chest. "Yeah," Maria replies, her voice trembling slightly. "What was it?" Jebediah stops, his lantern illuminating his weathered face. His eyes are narrowed, his expression grim. "I don't know," he says, "but I don't like it. Let's be careful." We continue our descent, the growling growing louder with each step. It's accompanied by a strange, rhythmic scraping sound, as if something is dragging itself along the stone floor. We round a corner and find ourselves in a large cavern. In the center of the cavern, a massive pile of bones rises like a macabre monument. The bones are of all shapes and sizes, human and animal alike, a testament to the mine's deadly history. And then we see it, a creature unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's tall and gaunt, its skin stretched taut over its skeletal frame. Its eyes glow with an unnatural light, and its teeth are long and sharp. It stands hunched over the pile of bones, gnawing on a femur. The creature raises its head and stares at us, its eyes burning into our souls. A low growl rumbles in its chest, and it takes a step towards us. "That's one of the sand-eaters," Jebediah whispers, his voice filled with dread. "They're the guardians of the mine, and they don't take kindly to trespassers." My blood runs cold. Sand-eaters, guardians. This was getting more insane by the second. I grip my camera tighter, my knuckles turning white. Mark fumbles for the pistol in his backpack, his face pale with fear. Even Jebediah, the grizzled prospector, looks genuinely terrified. The sand-eater takes another step towards us, its growl intensifying. The bones in its hand crack and splinter as it clenches its fist. It's clear that it's not going to let us pass without a fight. "What do we do?" Mark whispers, his voice barely audible. Jebediah shakes his head. "We can't fight it. They're too strong, too fast. We have to try and reason with it." Reason with it? This thing looks like it hasn't had a reasonable thought in centuries. But Jebediah seems to know what he's doing, so I decide to trust him. "Creature," Jebediah calls out, his voice surprisingly steady. "We mean you no harm. We're just passing through." The sand-eater stops its advance, its head cocked to one side. It stares at us with its glowing eyes as if trying to decipher our intentions. For a moment, there's a tense silence, broken only by the sound of the wind whistling through the canyon. Then the sand-eater speaks. Its voice is raspy and guttural, like the sound of rocks grinding together. "Why do you trespass on sacred ground?" Sacred ground? So there's more to this place than just a creepy mine and a cannibalistic monster. "We didn't know," I say, trying to keep my voice from trembling. "We heard the singing sand, and we are curious. We didn't mean to offend anyone." The sand-eater stares at me for a long moment, its eyes piercing into my soul. I can feel it searching my mind, trying to determine if I'm telling the truth. Finally, it seems satisfied. "The singing sand is a warning," it says. "It calls to those who are lost, those who seek something they cannot find. But it also attracts those who would defile this place, those who would steal its secrets." "We don't want to steal anything," Mark says, his voice still shaking slightly. "We just want to understand." The sand-eater lets out a dry, humorless chuckle. "Understanding is a dangerous thing. Some truths are best left buried." "But what is this place?" I ask. "What's so special about it?" The sand-eater hesitates for a moment, as if debating whether or not to answer. Finally, it sighs. "This is the gateway to the other side," it says. "A place where the veil between worlds is thin. The singing sand is the sound of spirits trying to break through, trying to communicate with the living." My mind reels. A gateway to the other side? Spirits? This was way beyond anything I could have imagined. "And the mine?" I ask. "What's in the Hope Mine?" The sand-eater's eyes narrow. "That is not for you to know," it says. "The mine is a place of great power, a place where the living can commune with the dead. But it is also a place of great danger. Many have entered the mine, but few have ever returned." "But why are you guarding it?" Mark asks. "Why are you protecting it?" The sand-eater looks down at the pile of bones in front of it. "I am bound to this place," it says. "I am the guardian of the gateway, the protector of the secrets within. It is my duty to keep the living from disturbing the dead, and to keep the dead from escaping into the world of the living." A shiver runs down my spine. This was getting more and more terrifying. "So what do we do?" I ask. "Do we just leave?" The sand-eater considers this for a moment. "I could kill you," it says, "prevent you from ever revealing what you have seen, but I sense that you are not evil. You are merely curious." "That's right," I say quickly. "Just curious." "Therefore," the sand-eater continues, "I will allow you to leave, but you must promise me something." "Anything," Mark says. "You must never speak of this place to anyone," the sand-eater says. "You must never reveal its location. You must never attempt to return. If you break this promise, I will hunt you down and I will make you pay." I gulp. That sounded like a pretty serious threat. "We promise," I say. "We won't tell anyone." We won't come back. Mark nods in agreement. We swear, he says. The sand eater stares at us for a long moment as if trying to determine if we're sincere. Finally, it seems satisfied. Very well, it says. You may leave. But be warned, the desert remembers. It will not forget your trespass. And if you ever cross its path again, it will not be so forgiving. The sand eater steps aside, clearing the path out of the canyon. We don't hesitate. We turn and run, our hearts pounding in our chests. We scramble back through the opening in the rock face, and we don't stop running until we're back at the jeep. We jump inside, slam the doors and start the engine. I put the jeep in gear and floor it, desperate to get as far away from that place as possible. As we drive away, I glance back at the canyon. The sand eater is still standing there, watching us. Its eyes glow in the darkness, a silent warning. I know that we'll never forget what we saw in Death Valley. The singing sand, the hope mine, the sand eater. It will haunt our dreams forever. But we made a promise, and we intend to keep it. We won't tell anyone about this place. We won't come back. Because some secrets are best left buried in the sands of Death Valley, where they can never be disturbed. And some sounds are best left unheard, lest they drive you insane. We drive through the night, not stopping until we are miles away from Death Valley, not stopping until we can't hear the singing sand any longer, not stopping until we feel like we are safe, or at least as safe as we can be after an experience like that. We know, however, that even though we are far away, a part of us will always remain there, trapped in that canyon, listening to the sand eater and the whispers of the mine, forever bound to the secrets of Death Valley. We check into a dingy motel on the outskirts of Beatty, Nevada. The fluorescent lights hum, a pathetic imitation of the desert silence we crave. We barely speak, just shower, the gritty red dust swirling down the drain like the last vestiges of our sanity. Sleep comes fitfully, haunted by echoing groans and the feeling of being watched by something ancient and malevolent. I keep seeing that miner's eyes, wide with terror, reflecting the dancing shadows of the canyon walls. The next morning, we eat in silence at a greasy diner, the smell of bacon and coffee doing little to dispel the lingering dread. "What do you think it was?" Sarah finally asks, pushing a half-eaten plate of eggs away. "I don't know," I reply, stirring my coffee, the spoon clinking against the ceramic a jarring sound. "Some kind of a geological phenomenon mixed with something else." "Something else?" she presses, her voice barely a whisper. I look up, meeting her gaze. "Something unnatural. That miner. He knew something. He was warning us. About the sand. About more than just the sand, I say. About what lives in it." We drive back to Los Angeles in silence, the radio off, the windows up. We can't shake the feeling that we are being followed, that the sounds of Death Valley are chasing us, clinging to the tires, seeping into the upholstery. Back in the city, the noise and the crowds are a welcome distraction, a shield against the silence that now terrifies us. We try to forget what we saw, what we heard, but the memory of the singing sand, the whispering voices, and the haunted look in Jebediah's eyes lingers, a constant reminder of the darkness that lies hidden beneath the surface of Death Valley. Weeks turn into months, and we slowly begin to piece our lives back together. Mark throws himself into his work, burying himself in spreadsheets and deadlines. I immerse myself in editing the footage, trying to find some logical explanation for what we experienced. But the more I look at the footage, the more convinced I become that there is no logical explanation. The distortions in the audio, the strange shadows in the background, the inexplicable feeling of dread that permeates every frame. It all points to something beyond our understanding. One night, I'm sitting at my computer, replaying the interview with Jebediah for the 100th time. His words echo in my ears. Some hear madness, and some hear the truth. I pause the video and stare at his face, searching for some clue, some hidden meaning. And then I notice something I hadn't seen before. In the reflection of his glasses, I see a faint image of the Hope Mine. But it's not the mine we saw. It's a different mine, older, more dilapidated, almost swallowed by the sand. I zoom in on the image, enhancing it as much as I can. And then I see it, etched into the rock face above the mine entrance. A symbol, a series of interlocking circles and triangles, unlike anything I've ever seen before. I take a screenshot and start searching online, scouring ancient texts and obscure websites, desperate to find some reference to the symbol. Days turn into sleepless nights as I delve deeper into the mystery. I learn about ancient Native American legends of sand spirits and desert demons, of hidden portals and forgotten gods. I discover that Death Valley has been a sacred place for centuries, a place of power and mystery, a place where the veil between worlds is thin. And then, finally, I find it, the symbol. It's a Sumerian glyph, a symbol of interdimensional travel, a key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. My heart pounds in my chest. Could it be possible? Could the singing sand be a gateway to another dimension? Could the voices we heard be the echoes of beings from another world? I call Mark, my voice trembling with excitement. Mark, I think I know what's going on. I think I know yet what's causing the singing sand. He's skeptical at first, but as I explain my findings, he starts to listen, his skepticism slowly giving way to a flicker of hope. So you're saying that the Hope Mine is a portal? He asks. I don't know for sure, I say, but I think it's worth investigating. I think we need to go back to Death Valley. He hesitates for a moment, then sighs. Okay, he says, but this time we're going prepared. We spend the next few weeks gathering supplies, researching the Hope Mine, and preparing ourselves for whatever we might find. We pack extra water, food, and medical supplies. We buy a high-powered EMF meter to detect any unusual energy fields. And we contact a local geologist who specializes in the geology of Death Valley. When we finally return to Death Valley, the air is thick with anticipation. The sun beats down on us mercilessly as we drive towards the Hope Mine. The landscape is as desolate and unforgiving as ever, but this time we're not afraid. We're determined to uncover the truth, no matter what the cost. We meet with the geologist, Dr. Emily Carter, at a small diner in Furnace Creek. She's a wiry woman with a sharp mind and a passion for the desert. We show her the symbol we found in the reflection of Jebediah's glasses, and her eyes widen in surprise. I've seen this before, she says. It's an ancient Sumerian glyph. It's said to be a symbol of interdimensional travel. She tells us about the strange geological anomalies in the area surrounding the Hope Mine, about the unusual magnetic fields and the unexplained seismic activity. She confirms our suspicions that the mine could be a portal to another dimension. But be careful, she warns us. Death Valley is a dangerous place. There are forces at work here that we don't understand. We thank her for her help and head toward the Hope Mine. As we approach the entrance, we can feel the energy building, the air crackling with an almost palpable force. We take a deep breath and step inside. The mine is dark and damp, the air thick with the smell of dust and decay. We switch on our headlamps and proceed cautiously, our hearts pounding in our chests. The tunnel twists and turns, leading us deeper and deeper into the earth. As we go further, the singing sound becomes louder, more intense, until it's almost deafening. Suddenly, we come to a large cavern. In the center of the cavern, we see it, a shimmering portal, a swirling vortex of light and energy. The Sumerian glyph is etched into the rock face above the portal, glowing with an eerie luminescence. We stare in awe, our minds struggling to comprehend what we're seeing. This is it, the gateway to another dimension, the source of the singing sand, the answer to all our questions. But as we approach the portal, we hear a sound, a low growl coming from the shadows. And then we see them, the sand eaters. They're not creatures of flesh and blood. They're beings of pure energy, shimmering and distorted, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. They rise from the shadows, their forms coalescing, and they advance towards us, their growls turning into a deafening roar. We raise our weapons, but we know it's futile. We're no match for these creatures. But then, something unexpected happens. Jebediah appears, seemingly out of nowhere, stepping between us and the sand eaters. He raises his hands, chanting in a language we don't understand. The sand eaters hesitate, their forms flickering, as if they're being repelled by Jebediah's energy. "Go!" he shouts. "Get out of here! I'll hold them off." We don't hesitate. We turn and run, flee in the cavern, flee in the Hope Mine, flee in Death Valley. We don't look back. We know that Jebediah has sacrificed himself to save us. We emerge from the mine, gasping for air, our bodies trembling with adrenaline. We drive away as fast as we can, leaving Death Valley behind us. We never see Jebediah again. Back in Los Angeles, we try to make sense of what happened. We tell the authorities about the Hope Mine, about the portal, about the sand eaters, but they dismiss us as crackpots. They say we're suffering from a heat stroke and dehydration. They tell us to get some rest. But we know the truth. We know what we saw. We know what we heard. And we know that Death Valley is more than just a desolate desert. It's a gateway to another world, a place of unimaginable power and unspeakable danger. We decide to release the footage we captured, hoping that someone, somewhere, will believe us. We post it online and it goes viral. People from all over the world are fascinated by the singing sand, by the whispering voices, by the mystery of Death Valley. Some people call us heroes. Some people call us liars. But we don't care. We know we've done the right thing. We've exposed the truth, no matter how bizarre or unbelievable it may seem. And as for the singing sand, it still haunts our dreams. We still hear the voices whispering in the darkness. But now we understand them. We know what they're trying to tell us. They're warning us. They're telling us to stay away from Death Valley. They're telling us to leave the secrets buried in the sand. The desert holds many secrets, and some are best left undisturbed. Death Valley remains, a silent testament to the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the surface of our reality. A stark reminder that some places are best left unexplored. And the singing sand, it continues to sing, its haunting melody echoing through the ages, a siren song luring unsuspecting souls to their doom. The desert never forgets, and neither will we. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. Comment what you want to hear next.